Welcome to Manifested Publishers.
Hello learners, my name is Stephen Kariungi. Today we are going to discuss sexual reproduction in plants, a topic in Form 3, and this is our continuation from our previous lessons that we've been going on with. So I want us to first of all refer what we learned earlier about the two types of reproduction. We have two types. We have what we call the sexual reproduction, and we have asexual reproduction. So basically, today we are going to look at sexual reproduction and as it applies in plants. So first of all, when you talk of sexual reproduction, basically we are saying that it involves the use of gametes. It involves the use of gametes. And basically we talked about gametes as the sex cells. So in plants we have gametes, both male and the female gametes. And as we move on in this topic, we'll be finding out where in the plant are the male gametes produced and also where the female gametes are produced. Now, to help us understand the sexual reproduction in plants, it is important to understand the flower structure. And the reason why it is important to understand the flower structure is because the flower is the reproductive organ in a plant. So you can say that the flower is the reproductive organ in a plant. We know that we have different parts of the plant for different purposes, but basically the flower is the one that is used for reproduction. That means that it's the one that bears the gametes or the sex cells that will be used in the continuation of that particular generation. So I want us to look at the flower structure. The flower structure, and on this we'll have a simplified diagram showing how the flower looks like internally, then externally. So basically we have a diagram of a flower showing both the external parts and the internal parts. Change something a little bit. So basically, the flower looks like that. And first of all, a flower has two main parts. It has this part that we call the flower stalk. The flower stalk or the pedicel. That's another name for the flower stalk. And that is the point at which the flower is attached to the branch or to the stem. Then there is this other part, that is swollen, and that part we refer to it as the receptacle. So we have the receptacle. Now, it is at the receptacle where other floral parts are attached, other flower parts are attached. For example, we have that part. We refer to it as the sepal. We have this part, the petal. Then, inside the receptacle, we have the ovary. Above the ovary, we have the stigma. No, we have the style, sorry. We have the style, the stigma is up there. And then the stigma is here. So the stigma, the style, and the ovary, collectively, we have a name for that. We refer to that as the carpel. That is one stigma, one style, and one ovary collectively form what is called the carpel. And the carpel is the female part of the flower. Is the female part of the flower. That means that it's the one that produces the female gametes. On the other hand, I'll also isolate this part, and that is the filament. And then the top part of the filament, we have the anther. And those two parts, they form what is called the stamen or the stamen. So basically that shows the flower structure. It is important to understand the functions of each of these parts of the flower. It's important to understand each structure and its function. Structure and function of the flower. We've already mentioned the pedicel, starting from the bottom, or the flower stalk. This one attaches the flower to the stem. That's the point at which the flower is attached to the stem. Then we have number 2, the receptacle. And this one holds the main parts of the flower, e.g. the ovary, the petals, and so on and so forth. They are held by the receptacle. Then we'll take the ovary. This is the part now that bears the female gametes. So the ovary bears or produces the female gametes. Then we have, before we go to number 4, can also mention something here, that the ovary, stigma, and style one ovary, one stigma, and one style collectively form a carpel. And we can illustrate the carpel if we remove it from the flower and illustrate it somewhere outside. So we have the stigma, the style, and the ovary. And this is what we are calling a carpel. That's a carpel. So the ovary is the main part here because it's the one that bears the female gametes. The style and the stigma, we'll see how they help the ovary as we continue. But basically, the collection of the stigma, the style, and the ovary make a carpel. Now, sometimes a flower may have more than one carpel or may have many carpels. So, in this case, all the female parts of a flower are collectively referred to as the gynoecium. That is, all the female parts of the flower collectively, they are referred to as the gynoecium. So the gynoecium may either have one carpel or may have several carpels. Gynoecium. So that is all the female parts of the flower. Now I want to go to now the male parts. And the male parts, as I've indicated here, we have the filament and the anther. The filament and the anther, they collectively form a stamen. So one filament and one anther, they form a stamen. So we'll go to number 4 and look at the anther. And that is the part now that produces the male gametes. Produces the male gametes. That is the part that we have here. The anther is the one that bears the male gametes. So the anther and the filament are referred to as the stamen. And I'll also have a diagram simplified from here. So I have anther like that, then the stamen. So we have the anther and the filament. They collectively form a stamen. So we have a diagram showing here a stamen, how a stamen looks like. And I've said that the most important part of the stamen is the anther, the top part, because it's the one that produces the male gametes. It's the one that produces the male sex cells. Now, having looked at the female part of the flower and the male part of the flower, we'll go now to the other parts. The other parts of the flower that are not related to any sex of the flower, but these ones are general. So we have number 5, we have what we call the corolla. And this one is made of sepals. And these sepals are leaf-like structures. The sepals, they are leaf-like structures that protect the flower during bud development. Before the flower emerges from the buds, initially the flower is usually enclosed within the bud, and it's mainly protected by, it's mainly protected by the sepals. They are leaf-like structures. They are green in color. Now, those sepals collectively, is something I want to correct here. They form not the corolla, but they form the calyx. They form the calyx. A correction there. So those sepals, they protect the flower during bud development, before the flower opens up. Now, then we go to the next part. That's the one I had jumped into, and this is the corolla. And the corolla is made of petals. So there is a clarification there. Corolla is made of petals, but calyx is made of sepals. Calyx is made of leaf-like structures that protect the flower during bud development. That's the function. But the corolla is made of petals, which in most cases are brightly colored, and they are the ones that attract the agents of pollination, such as the insects. Yeah? The insects are attracted by the brightly colored petals. So those petals collectively form the corolla. So now in this case, we are saying that made of petals that are usually brightly colored to attract the insects for pollination. So insects are mainly attracted by the petals, and we have said that those petals collectively form what is called the corolla. Now, in some cases, you may find that the corolla may be made of petals that are fused together, or petals that are separate, small ones and separate. So, in case the petals are fused, we call that a gamopetalous. Gamopetalous corolla. Gamo means fused. So gamopetalous corolla is made of fused petals. Or it may not always be fused, but sometimes they can be free. So in this case, we have what we call meaning polypetalous corolla. This is made of many free petals. Many free petals. For example, something like a rose. If you look at the rose flower, you'll find that the petals are many. You can be able to pluck one. So we call that type of a corolla polypetalous. But in other cases, you may find that those petals are fused together to form what we are calling a gamopetalous corolla. So what we have learned today, we have introduced the flower structure. We have looked at the main parts of the flower and their functions. The pedicel, which is the flower stalk, attaches the flower to the stem. We have the receptacle that holds the main parts of the flower together, e.g. the ovary, the petals, and so on and so forth. We have seen the ovary bears the female gametes. And then we have said that if you take one ovary and its style and the stigma, they form what is called a carpel. And we may have a flower that has one carpel or many carpels. Now, all the female parts of the flower, they form what is called gynoecium. They form what is called the gynoecium. Then we have the anther, which is the part that produces the male gametes. And the anther, together with its filament, we refer to that as the stamen. So we have the anther and the filament. So the anther is the one that bears the male gametes. The male gametes are born here. Then we have gone ahead to look at other parts of the flower. We have looked at the calyx. The calyx is made of sepals. They are leaf-like structures that protect the flower during bud development. Then we have the corolla, which is made of petals that are usually, not in all cases, brightly colored to attract the insects for pollination. Insects are the agents of pollination. We'll see that much later. And then we are saying that if the corolla is made of petals that are fused together to form one structure, then we say that that is a gamopetalous. Gamo means they are fused. But if they are free, like for example in case of a rose, then we call that a polypetalous, separate, free petals. So we are going to stop there for that lesson, and we'll have a short assignment. So we have 3 questions there. The first question, name the reproductive organ in a plant. Number 2, draw a well-labeled diagram showing the main parts of a flower. A diagram that is well-labeled. And then what is a gynoecium and what is an androecium? Explain the meaning of these 2 terms, gynoecium and androecium. So we'll stop there for today. We meet next time.